Hello Internet, welcome back to From to Twilight. Normally this is a channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the world, about books, movies, music that I find interesting, and I focus on one thing. But I've recently been away and I want to do a video where I just talk about some of the interesting things that I experienced and saw and did while I was away. So I hope that's interesting to you. I've been in London and done and seen some cool stuff. Plus, at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about the books that I picked up along the way. I got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books to just, maybe 8 books to just reference at the end. But first I want to tell you that I went to London and I stayed in King's Cross. And on the first night, I went to Peckham with some friends, and we went to an event called Peckham 24. I used to live in Peckham back in the day. It's kind of become more of an artistic hub than it was back then. And this event, Peckham 24, is like a photography exhibition event and a book fair for publishers of art books and photography books. I did buy a book, but I gave it to a friend. But this was a really cool event. They were trying to focus on ideas around community, and all of the stalls were run by like small press, so you had a lot of zines and a lot of people who've made their own photography books. Then there were also some art press publishers who had like some more kind of impressive, beautiful books. If you're in London, go check it out. Saturday I went to Housmans Bookshop, which is in King's Cross. Now, if you don't know this bookshop, it's really interesting. It's been there for a long time, and it's like a radical left-wing bookshop. So it has a decent fiction section downstairs, but the really impressive thing about the shop is the non-fiction. Their collection spans a range of like sort of high culture, philosophy and political critique to like radical zines, almost like handmade anarchist pamphlets and everything in between. And it's a whole range of stuff from like communist, socialist, anarchist, anti-fascist, and more just like kind of maybe ecology focused material, psychology, philosophy. Such an interesting shop. Like I went in there and I nearly had a heart attack because I was really trying not to spend too much money. But I'll tell you at the end which books I picked up there. Later the same day, I did a digital conference where I was speaking with 3 other people. They were all from America, and I was, representing the Norwegians, but I was in the UK at the time, and we were talking about the concept of the embodiment of madness. So how does madness, how can madness or like psychosis be understood as an embodied phenomenon in a clinical situation? I don't normally use the word madness, but I participated because my work is relevant. I haven't yet submitted my summary of what I said at this conference, but when I have, I'll link it in the description in case you're interested in reading the ideas that I presented. And then that evening, because I was staying in a hotel in King's Cross, I went to the Barbican and I saw the musician Fatouma Diawara, who is from Mali. She was performing with her band. This concert was just incredible. She's a great guitarist. She's an even better singer. And then randomly, she brought Damon Albarn from Blur out twice in the course of the performance because they are evidently close friends. And I believe Damon Albarn was instrumental in giving her a platform, at least in the West and in the United Kingdom, and produced her last album. I don't normally take mobile phone footage at concerts, but I'm just going to show you a little clip of the end of this concert so you can get an idea of what the vibe was like in the room. On Sunday, I met my best friend Lakshmi. She gave me a book. I'm going to tell you what afterwards. And then we went to an event called Offprint, which was at the Tate Modern. Now, the Tate Modern was a power station on the south bank of the River Thames in London, which has been converted into an enormous exhibition space for modern and contemporary art. It's free to get in, although if you want to see the special exhibitions, you have to buy a ticket. We wanted to go to a show there, but it was sold out. So what we didn't know is that there was also a publishing fair for experimental and art books in the Turbine Hall of the Tate called Offprint. I'm going to link to the event in the description. I got a kind of interesting zine that I'm going to show you afterwards. So it's just like incredible how much small press stuff is going on, and all of the kind of weird and interesting books, zines, pamphlets you can find if you seek out these book fairs. Then in the rest of my trip, I went to visit my family in Swindon, and one of the highlights of that was that I played guitar with my brother with his little band. He's a drummer. He's playing an electric kit. There was a bass player, there was a keyboard player, and I was playing electric guitar. And this was just like such a beautiful experience, and it made me want to just say, like on record, if you have friends that play music, just get in a room and play with them. You know, I'm never going to play with those people again. Nobody saw us. There was no audience, but just being in the room for 2 hours and just jamming, making music, improvising together, is like a really like a heartwarming experience. Then, because one of my old friends from school, who I used to play in a band with, is a very nostalgic individual, I went to see the band Supergrass from the 1990s playing at the Roundhouse in Camden in London. Now, I will say that the sound was terrible, but the performance was great. The band were really good. I haven't listened to Supergrass probably since 1999, but it was really enjoyable. They're a good live band, real great chemistry, very tight, and much better musicians than I remembered. So that was exciting. And then I spent the end of my time in the UK in the studio with my band Kleinzeit, from who I used to play with in England back in the day. Now, normally when I go and meet them, so drummer Harpo is there and the guitarist Bill, and we get into a room and we just play together and we write a couple of songs. And, you know, in a weekend we'll record 2 songs, and then we'll spend maybe 2 years mixing it because we do it in between everything else. Anyway, I say all this to say that the drummer, Harpo, had COVID. He was ill. He was sick for the whole week, which meant that at the end of the week when we were supposed to meet, he wasn't able to come. So the guitarist Bill and I went to the studio anyway, and Bill played the piano and I sang, and we wrote 6 songs. And this really made me think about a couple of things. Like, one, about how something that appears to be a disadvantage can just be taken as an opportunity. Like, we couldn't play the way that we normally do, so we had to do something else. But another thing is how altering your creative practice, you know, he, instead of playing the guitar, he's playing the piano. Instead of jamming as a live band, we're just doing a songwriting session, and we wrote 6 songs. So it just made me think about, like, instead of being disappointed or angry with the situation as it is, how you can just take it as the conditions of creation. Equally, Bill's friend Hattie, she couldn't do her local radio show because she was unwell. So he and a friend took over and did it, and then he invited me and another friend of ours to read poem on the air. So I read a poem on London local radio, and it just made me think a lot about taking opportunities when they're presented. All right, that's my little video log about my life. I've never done it before. I may never do it again. Just, it was an inspiring time, so I wanted to share it with the few of you who do watch my channel. And now I'm going to end by talking about books. Okay, so here are the 2 books that I read while I was away. As you can hear, I had quite a busy time, so I didn't get a lot of time for reading. But I did manage to read Anatomy of a Killer by Romy Hausman. This is a thriller, written in a slightly unusual style. The killer has apparently been apprehended at the beginning of the book, and the book is written from the perspective of his daughter. I don't typically ever read thrillers, so I don't have much to compare this to. but I thought it was engaging, creative, interesting, and it kept me kind of guessing what the twist was going to be throughout the book. I will say it's interesting to see somebody sustain tension in writing over the course of over 300 pages. If you've read it, jump in the comments, let me know what you thought. The other book that I read was a book of poems by Emma Ruth Rundle called The Bella Vista. And I've got a video about this coming up this week. I also bought 3 books from Housmans, the Radical Bookshop, and I've read one of those. That is a very short tract called The Abolition of Work by Bob Black. Bob Black is a sort of very controversial figure within anarchism. He's written some stuff that's considered anti-feminist. I read it. It was really just not very informed. But The Abolition of Work is a fun book. It's kind of written in the style, in a way, of the Situationists, very provocative, drawing maybe a little bit on the work of Bertrand Russell about idleness. He's arguing that the work system needs to be abolished in its entirety and that we should focus more on play. I think, like a lot of anarchist writing, if you don't read this as a kind of critique of mass culture, but more a critique of your own attitudes towards things, and you try to employ it within your own life, I actually think it's quite interesting and inspiring. I also picked up a book about vegan anarchism. It's by the same publisher. This is a kind of small press called Active Distribution. They've published these small and very affordable anarchist tracts. This book is written by Nathan Poirier, published by them this year. I'm excited to read it. Maybe I'll come back and tell you about it when I've done it. The third book that I bought is a book called Pink Pilled by Lewis Shearing. They are more well known for their writings about bisexuality. But this is a book about right-wing women, and particularly on the internet. I've nearly finished it. I might make a video about it. Let me know if you'd be interested to watch a video about this book, or if you've read it. And my best friend, gave me a book of Audre Lorde's poetry, Coal. I've only read a little bit of Audre Lorde before. I'm looking forward to reading this. Do you know her work? What do you think about it? So that's another poetry book I'm going to be reading, maybe come back and talk about it. I also went to the British Library, and the British Library have started publishing really interesting series of books, like where they've got people to collect and republish out of print stories, where they've got a sci-fi line and they've also got like a horror and weird fiction line. They've got so many of these books. There's tons of them, and they're all like really niche. The one that I picked up was The Weird Tales of Dorothy K. Haynes, who is a Scottish writer of weird fiction. It's a collection of her works. I actually don't know her work, but they've compared her in the blurb to some interesting writers. I'm really looking forward to reading this. Some of her stuff's been anthologized in the Pan horror anthologies earlier on. I used to read some of those when I was a kid. Do you know her? Have you heard of her? Would you be interested to watch a video about this book? The last thing I want to tell you about is at the book fair Offprint at the Tate. I was trying not to spend too much money on books, as I said, but I did pick this up. It's a zine called Talker, and it's issue 5 of Talker. This was really interesting to me. This guy who runs this zine, he finds obscure interviews or discussions, recordings of them, transcribes them, and publishes them in zine form. So he had found a conversation between the writer Kathy Acker and the performance artist Spalding Gray, which has never been published in written form. It's from the ICA in the 80s, and he's published this as a transcript. Now, I haven't read it yet, but I'm really looking forward to reading it. And I want to thank the people who keep mentioning Kathy Acker in my comments, because I read Kathy Ecker when I was in my early 20s and I don't even really remember it. So it's something that I want to get back to, and I thought this would be a good start. Okay, thank you so much if you watched this video. I don't normally talk very much about my life. I thought I'd give it a go. I probably won't do it very often, but if this gets a good response, maybe I'll do it again sometime. I hope that all of you have been having a nice time while I've been away, and I'm coming back soon with my video about Emma Ruth Rundle's poetry book.